if you're driving down Highway 13 in southern Illinois, there's this sign.
Right, outside of Carterville.
Yeah, exactly. And the sign just says, "Come live with us."
Which, is a really welcoming sentiment on the surface.
Right, on the surface. But today we're doing a deep dive into a stack of investigative reports and court records that give that sign a much, much darker subtext.
So welcome, everyone. I'm glad you're joining us for this one because it is a wild ride.
It really is. It's one of those situations where you're looking at a community that is incredibly proud. And they have a reason to be, right? Carterville, they're nestled right there between Marion and Carbondale in Williamson County.
Started out as a booming coal town in the 1870s, right? Founded by Laban Carter.
Exactly. But, as the coal industry kind of faded out, the town had to figure out a new identity. And they anchored that new identity almost entirely to their schools and specifically their athletic programs.
I mean, John A. Logan College is there, but the real religion in Carterville, especially in the 2000s, was Friday night football. So I want you to imagine something for a second. Just put yourself in this specific setting. Picture a high school football scoreboard.
Oh, like a real classic Friday Night Lights kind of deal.
Exactly. A crisp Friday night in southern Illinois. The stadium lights are glaring. Right? The marching band is playing in the background. You can probably smell the grass and the concession stand.
Oh, yeah. Popcorn and hot chocolate.
Right. But I want you to look specifically at the numbers painted on that scoreboard. Because for this town, those numbers represent a massive, staggering legacy.
We're talking decades of history here.
We really are. 424 wins, an all-time winning percentage of .623. You've got coaches boasting win rates up in the .700s.
Which is just astronomically high for a public high school program.
It is. For 72 years, that pristine scoreboard has been the beating heart of Carterville High School. We're talking Williamson County, southern Illinois. The Lions.
The Lions.
This is a community that absolutely bleeds orange and black.
They live and die by the Friday night game.
They really do. But now, I need you to imagine looking behind that scoreboard. And behind it, you find this 20-year paper trail. A paper trail of alleged sexual abuse, ignored warnings, and a town that honestly repeatedly chose to protect a winning percentage over its own teenagers.
Yeah, and when you study cases of systemic institutional failure, which is what this is, the terrifying part is rarely just the alleged predator.
Yeah.
I mean, predators unfortunately exist in many environments, we know that. The truly terrifying part is the machinery of the institution that surrounds them.
The bureaucracy.
Exactly, the bureaucracy that absorbs complaints, dilutes them, and ultimately shields the adult at the expense of the child. It's the system that protects the status quo.
Which brings us to the core of this deep dive today. Our mission for this conversation is to essentially perform an autopsy on that exact machinery.
We have to look at how it actually functioned, or failed to function.
Right, because we were looking at a man named John Jacob Wakey.
Most people in town just know him as Jake. Jake Wakey.
Jake Wakey. Born September 12th, 1979. He's 49 years old. And for more than 2 decades, he was just a fixture in the Carterville Community Unit School District number 5.
He was everywhere.
He was a teacher, an assistant football coach. He was the defensive coordinator. But we are definitely not here to break down his defensive schemes today.
No, absolutely not.
Because right now, Jake Wakey is facing 9 Class 2 felony counts of aggravated criminal sexual abuse.
9 counts.
9. And the alleged victims are minors, former student athletes who were between the ages of 13 and 17 at the time.
And, those numbers, that age range, it represents a profound, just massive breach of trust.
It's hard to even wrap your head around.
It is. And to understand how a breach that massive sustains itself for over 2 decades, we really have to look at the very foundation of his employment. Because the failures didn't just start when the police finally got involved in 2024 or when the arrest happened in 2026.
It goes way further back.
Way back. The institutional blinders were put on before he ever even stepped foot on the Carterville field.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the timeline here is where the whole narrative of a so-called safeguarded school district immediately falls apart.
It completely crumbles.
So we're going back to January of 2003. Before he's hired, Wakey is up in Coles County, Illinois.
Which is a couple hours north of Carterville.
Right. And he is charged with the sale and delivery of liquor to a minor.
A huge red flag.
A massive red flag. That is a Class A misdemeanor in Illinois. And to put that in perspective for you listening, that is the most serious class of misdemeanors in the state.
Yeah, it's just one tiny step below a full-blown felony.
Exactly. It carries significant weight, especially when you're considering a career in education.
Or coaching minors.
Right. So he voluntarily appears in court on February 19th, 2003. He pleads guilty.
He doesn't fight it.
He doesn't fight it at all. He
Yeah.
pleads guilty. He's placed on 6 months of court supervision and pays a $500 fine. So that is February 2003. Keep that date in your head, because that very same year, 2003, Carterville hires him to be a teacher and a football coach.
The exact same year.
The same year. I honestly struggle to even process the mechanics of how that happens. It feels like applying to be a bank manager when you have a freshly inked conviction for embezzlement.
Yeah, the ink is literally still wet on the court documents.
Right. You just walked out of a courthouse after pleading guilty to providing alcohol to a minor, and a school district hands you a job where you are directly supervising and mentoring minors. How does that physically work within the hiring apparatus of a public school?
Well, this is where we have to look at the systemic gaps, right? The gaps that exist between legal mandates and actual execution.
Okay, explain that.
Because in Illinois, background checks for school employees are statutorily required. They aren't optional. You're supposed to be run through both state and federal databases.
So they had to have run him.
Exactly. So analytically, when we look at this, we're really looking at 3 distinct operational failures that could have allowed Wakey to slip through the cracks here.
Walk me through the first possibility. What's failure number 1?
The first is just a catastrophic failure of basic protocol, meaning the background check simply wasn't thorough enough.
Look, they didn't look hard enough.
Right. You have to remember, this is 2003. Digital integration wasn't what it is today.
Oh, that's true. The internet was different.
Very different. A district might run a local county check, maybe a regional check, but they might fail to pull the comprehensive statewide records.
Ah, so they only checked Williamson County.
Exactly. And the conviction was in Coles County, a couple hours away. So if they didn't pull the statewide record, it wouldn't have flagged the misdemeanor.
Which implies that the district's hiring protocol was just porous by design, or at least by extreme negligence.
Negligence is a good word for it.
So what's the second operational failure? Let's say they did do a statewide check.
The second is bureaucratic lag.
Bureaucratic lag. Okay.
Think about the timeline. He pleads guilty in mid-February. Let's say the Carterville hiring process ramps up in March or April.
Right, spring hiring season for the next school year.
Exactly. The bureaucratic wheels of the state database might not have updated yet.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The school runs the check, but the clerk up in Coles County hasn't entered the final disposition into the statewide computer system yet. So the database returns a clean slate. He basically slips through a chronological crack.
Wait, let me stop you right there, though. Even if the state database was slow in 2003, which, sure, I can believe that, doesn't a job applicant for a teaching position have to sign a sworn self-disclosure form?
They absolutely do.
Like a piece of paper asking, have you ever been convicted of a crime under penalty of perjury?
Yes, every district has that.
So he would have had to lie on that form, right?
Or he told the truth. Which brings us to the third and, frankly, the most chilling possibility.
Oh, no.
Someone at the district saw the conviction.
You think they knew?
It's highly possible. They looked at his self-disclosure. Or maybe the background check actually did catch the Class A misdemeanor for providing alcohol to a minor.
And they just ignored it.
And the hiring committee decided to hire him anyway.
Because he knew how to run a defense.
Because he knew how to run a defense.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because in highly competitive athletic cultures, specific skill sets are heavily commodified.
Winning is everything.
Right. If you know how to win football games, certain indiscretions are routinely reclassified by the hiring committee.
They rationalize it.
They do. Providing alcohol to a minor gets downgraded in their minds. It goes from a quote-unquote danger to students to just boys being boys or a youthful mistake.
Wow.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, this is exactly how institutions begin their rot. Rules and legal mandates are treated as negotiable variables whenever they conflict with the primary objective of the institution. And here, the primary objective was winning football games.
If that third possibility is true, and even if it's just the first two, honestly, think about what that signals to the employee on day one.
Oh, it's a massive signal.
You've just pled guilty to endangering a minor's welfare by giving them alcohol, and the school essentially hands you the keys to the locker room anyway. It establishes a baseline that the rules are completely flexible for you.
It creates a tremendous sense of institutional invulnerability.
Institutional
Yeah.
invulnerability.
The employee learns immediately that the institution is willing to bend its own moral and legal framework to accommodate their utility. If I am useful to you, the rules don't apply to me.
And it didn't take 20 years for that sense of invulnerability to manifest to a real problem. Let's move forward a bit. Let's go 6 years later. It is 2009.
He's settled in now.
Very settled in. Wakey is an established quantity in Carterville. He's in the building. He's on the sidelines. He is a known commodity. But then the district receives a formal complaint regarding his conduct.
And we should note, this wasn't just a vague rumor.
No, not at all. According to the district records, which, by the way, eventually had to be pried open and released publicly, the complaint specifically alleged unprofessional conduct.
And what did that entail in 2009?
Specifically, inappropriate text messages with students and inappropriate interactions with students off campus.
Okay, we need to contextualize 2009 for a second.
Yeah, paint that picture.
Because mobile technology was becoming fully integrated into student life. Kids all had cell phones.
Flip phones, T9 texting, all of that.
Exactly. And school districts nationwide were actively drawing really hard boundaries regarding electronic communication between staff and minors. It was a massive topic for HR departments.
So the district actually investigates this complaint. They look into the claims and they substantiate them.
They prove it happened.
They formally confirm that policy violations occurred. The school knows for a fact that a teacher, their defensive coordinator, is texting students inappropriately and interacting with them off campus in a way that directly violates policy.
They have the proof.
They have the proof. So what is the disciplinary action?
Brace yourself.
They give him a 10-day unpaid suspension and a quote-unquote written remediation plan.
Unbelievable.
He keeps his job. He keeps his access to the exact same students he was inappropriately texting. Now, I want to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Sure.
If the texts didn't explicitly contain criminal content, like, let's say they were just overly familiar or boundary crossing, but not overtly illegal, wouldn't the teachers' union have sued the district if they tried to fire him outright? Maybe the administration's hands were legally tied.
That is exactly the friction point where student safety collides with bureaucratic self-preservation.
Okay, yeah.
Yes, firing a tenured or contracted employee is notoriously difficult. It invites union grievances, it invites arbitration, and it invites potential lawsuits from the employee.
It's expensive and messy.
Very messy. But a school district's mandate is to protect children. It is not to avoid arbitration.
Right.
What you are seeing with a 10-day suspension is a mechanism I refer to as the illusion of action.
Break down the mechanics of the illusion of action. How does that serve the district? Because from the outside, it just looks weak.
Bureaucracies are incredibly averse to public conflict. They hate it. And they are terrified of legal liability. So instead of solving the root problem by removing a verified threat, which would cause friction, the administration uses minor disciplinary actions to manufacture a paper trail.
Ah, a paper trail.
Yes. If a parent or a state board ever comes knocking and asks, "Did you know about this behavior?" the district can reach into a filing cabinet, pull out a folder, and say, "We addressed it, we levied a suspension, we implemented a remediation plan."
So they cover their own backs.
Exactly. The paperwork acts as a shield for the administration. It successfully manages the institutional liability, but it completely abandons the students because it leaves the boundary violator walking the halls of the building.
And the semantic games they play to maintain that shield are just infuriating. Like later on, the district claimed that there were, quote, no similar formal complaints received between the end of that 2009 discipline and November of 2024.
And the operative word in that sentence is formal.
Which is a massive caveat.
It's entirely legally driven language.
Yeah.
There is a cavernous, miles-wide difference between nothing happened and nothing was formally reported.
Right, because why would a kid report anything?
Exactly. Consider the power dynamic of a small-town football program. Put yourself in the shoes of a 15-year-old student-athlete.
Okay.
The defensive coordinator controls your playing time. He controls your social standing within the entire school. And potentially, he controls your college recruitment prospects.
He holds your entire future in his hands, essentially.
He does. So if that man crosses the line with you, what incentive do you possibly have to report it?
Especially when the institutional precedent is already set. The last time someone reported him in 2009, he got a 2-week unpaid vacation and then came right back to work.
He was untouchable.
Yeah.
And the 2009 incident was a huge educational moment for the entire student body. whether they knew the specific details of the text messages or not.
Kids talk. They notice when a coach is gone for 2 weeks.
Could absolutely notice. And
Yeah.
the lesson the school taught them was clear. The school will prioritize the coach's career over your discomfort or your safety.
Wow.
A culture of silence is not some spontaneous phenomenon. It is a learned behavior. It's dictated by the environment. The administration engineered an ecosystem where submitting a formal complaint was demonstrably pointless and potentially disastrous for a student's social survival.
So, of course, there were no formal complaints.
Right. So, of course, there weren't. The system was meticulously calibrated to repel them.
Which leads us directly into the era where the paper trail finally turns into a grand jury indictment.
For core years.
The core years. We are looking at the years 2013 to 2015. This block of time forms the core of these current legal allegations, though, as we'll see, the timeline stretches far beyond that. But let's examine the specific charges brought by the Williamson County Grand Jury.
The recent ones.
Right. Wakey faces 9 Class 2 felony counts of aggravated criminal sexual abuse.
The term aggravated is a really critical legal enhancement here. We shouldn't gloss over that.
Explain that enhancement.
It specifically denotes that the alleged abuse was committed by a person who is in a position of trust or a position of authority over the minor.
Like a teacher or a coach.
Exactly. The law recognizes that a predator using their institutional authority to coerce a victim is an aggravating factor. It makes the crime inherently worse.
So the investigators built these formal charges primarily around that 2013 to 2015 window. 4 individuals provided the formal sworn statements that actually led to these 9 counts.
4 incredibly brave individuals.
Absolutely. However, law enforcement has been incredibly transparent with the public that they have identified at least 8 potential victims so far.
And they anticipate that number could grow.
Right, as the investigation deepens.
Which sadly is standard in these types of systemic abuse cases.
How so?
Because once the initial institutional dam breaks, once someone finally goes on the record and the abuser is exposed, victims who have been carrying this in silence for years, sometimes decades, they finally feel safe enough to come forward. The fear of being the only one is gone.
We have to analyze the ecosystem where all this was allegedly happening, because he wasn't operating in a vacuum. During these core years, 2013 to 15, the head coach at Carterville was a man named Dennis Drust.
A very well-known figure.
A towering figure in that town. He coached for 17 years. His overall record was 136 wins and 46 losses.
That's incredible.
It is. That is a .747 winning percentage. He ran a highly tuned machine. And Wakey was his defensive coordinator. Now, I want to be incredibly explicitly clear with you listening right now because our sources are unambiguous on this exact point.
This is very important.
Dennis Drust is not accused of any criminal conduct.
None whatsoever.
There's 0 public accusation, no charge, and no evidence suggesting he was directly involved in or aware of any criminal acts.
It is a vital distinction to make. We are analyzing the structural environment, the coaching staff, the culture of the locker room. We are not indicting the head coach.
Agreed. Completely agreed. But, and here's where I struggle, if you've ever been around high school sports, you know that football staffs are incredibly insular.
Oh, they're a brotherhood.
They're a brotherhood. You are in that tiny coach's office for hours and hours breaking down film.
You're riding buses together.
You're riding buses, you're in the locker room, you're eating meals together. You know the exact physical and emotional states of your players and your staff. So I have to push back on the plausibility here.
Okay.
How does a defensive coordinator allegedly operate a predatory campaign against minors for years, completely under the radar of a head coach and the rest of the staff in a small town program? It just defies logic to me.
It does seem counterintuitive.
Yeah.
But this requires us to examine a psychological concept known as institutional awareness.
Institutional awareness.
Yes. And it operates on a spectrum.
Yeah.
On the far end of the spectrum, you have explicit documented knowledge. That's active cover-ups, hush money, destroying documents.
Right, the movie villain stuff.
Exactly. And as you stated, we have no evidence of that regarding the head coach here. But in the middle of that spectrum, you have willful blindness.
How does willful blindness actually function in a high-stakes environment like Friday Night Football?
Think about the timeline. Wakey already had a documented disciplinary history.
The 2009 text messages.
Right. The 2009 suspension happened. The athletic department inherently knew he missed 10 days of work.
They had to cover his shift.
Exactly. Yeah. So the staff is already operating alongside a colleague with a known substantiated history of severe boundary violations.
They know he crosses the line.
They know. But in a highly successful sports program, the sheer pressure to maintain that .47 winning percentage creates these powerful psychological blinders.
You just focus on the next opponent.
You focus exclusively on the defensive schemes. If your defensive coordinator is successfully keeping the opposing team out of the end zone, the deeply flawed human tendency is to just avoid looking too closely at the shadows.
You don't ask the questions.
You subconsciously decide not to ask questions because you do not want to deal with the operational friction the answers might bring. What if you ask and you find out something terrible and now you have to fire your best coordinator right before the playoffs?
Oh, man. So it's self-preservation again.
It doesn't require a malicious conspiracy in the coach's office. It simply requires a systemic failure of curiosity.
A failure of curiosity. That is a great phrase.
The institutional awareness stops right at the water's edge of accountability. As long as the scoreboard lights up in your favor, you just don't inspect the wiring.
We should also mention the current head coach, Brett Dial. He took over around 2019, and he boasts a 50-18 record.
Another great record.
Right. And again, to be clear, there are no accusations against him either. But the allegations against Wakey predate Dial's tenure as head coach, though they likely shared staff time together. It just illustrates how deeply embedded Wakey was.
He survived multiple eras of Carterville football.
He really did.
He was the architectural constant. The head coaches might change, the superintendents might change, but the defensive coordinator who intimately knows the system and, more importantly, intimately knows the community remains entrenched.
And here is a terrifying detail from our sources that expands the scope of this failure even further, because the alleged abuse didn't just stop in 2015.
No, it didn't.
There are entirely separate internal reviews currently underway regarding inappropriate text messages sent to a student in 2022.
Wow.
And another sent to a student in 2025.
Just last year.
Literally last year. Those reviews have now been handed over to law enforcement. If those are confirmed, we aren't talking about a 2-year lapse in judgment.
Not at all.
We are talking about predatory behavior stretching uninterrupted across a 20-plus year career.
Which forces us to confront the most agonizing element of this entire timeline.
And what's that?
The community was not operating in total ignorance. They were explicitly warned.
Oh, right. This is where the story shifts from complacency into active complicity.
Yeah, it's so dark here.
We're in 2022, 4 years before Wakey is ever put in handcuffs. A former Carterville student, and let's just call him Kyle to protect his identity, walks into a Carterville school board meeting.
Right.
Kyle had actually transferred out of the district before graduating, and in his own words, leaving Carterville was a, quote, life-saving decision.
That phrase alone should stop a school board in its tracks.
It really should, because he realized how deeply the system was failing its vulnerable students. So he stands up at the podium during the public comment section, and he doesn't just give an emotional speech.
He brings receipts.
He presents a 28-page slideshow.
Why have you normalized some teachers behaving sexually towards your students and not acting against it? Why have you normalized bullying and assault in your district to the point of not 1, not 2, but even 3 student suicides having still changed nothing for you? There have been a vast number of students who you are and were directly responsible for that have repeatedly experienced these things and had to persevere through everything alone.
Tonight, Kyle gave this 28-page presentation to board members and attendees. It's filled with dozens of Facebook and community forum posts alleging the same things Kyle presented tonight. The board, on the other hand, saying in response that they take these allegations very seriously. Here's a response from one board member. Keep in mind the audio may be a little hard to hear.
We have had situations that have been investigated by law enforcement that you alluded to, and we certainly take all of that very, very seriously.
A massively detailed compilation of community concern and trauma.
28 pages. Think about the effort it takes for a young man to put that together. He had spent years compiling screenshots of Facebook posts, comments, private messages from former students.
He did the investigation for them.
He did. This document detailed widespread bullying, intimidation, alleged sexual misconduct by staff members, and a glaring, undeniable pattern of the administration completely ignoring complaints. He laid the institutional rot bare for the school board and the community.
It's all right there in black and white.
So how does a town react to a 28-page dossier of systemic failure presented at a public meeting?
They dismiss him.
They completely write him off. The community reaction essentially boiled down to, well, there are no mugshots, there are no court dates, there are no arrests.
Yeah, they gaslit him.
They dismissed it as the drama of a disgruntled former student. Explain that to me. Because looking at 28 pages of testimony and doing absolutely nothing seems psychopathic.
It does seem that way.
Yeah.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture, this is a textbook demonstration of cognitive dissonance and institutional betrayal trauma within a tight-knit community.
Okay, unpack the sociology of that.
You have to understand the sociology of a town whose entire civic identity is anchored to an institution, in this case, the high school and its athletic success. That is who they are.
It's their pride.
Exactly. So when a whistleblower like Kyle stands up and presents that slideshow, he isn't just accusing a few individual teachers of misconduct. He is threatening the community's foundational narrative about itself.
He is threatening their entire worldview.
Precisely. The psychological friction, the cognitive dissonance that creates is excruciating. For the townspeople to sit in those folding chairs and believe Kyle's 28 pages, they have to accept that the beloved coaches they cheer for on Friday nights,
Right.
the administrators they sit next to at church on Sunday,
Yeah.
the people running their sacred community traditions are either active predators or complicit in protecting predators.
And they can't handle that.
They can't. That requires a complete destruction of their reality. Most people cannot process that level of trauma on a random Tuesday night at a school board meeting.
So what is their defense mechanism? How do they protect themselves from that truth?
They demand impossible, catastrophic proof. They shift the burden entirely onto the victims.
Yeah.
They basically say, unless you can show me police tape, a grand jury indictment, and a man in handcuffs, I'm going to choose to believe the authority figures who make me feel safe.
They require a formal arrest to validate the victim's claims.
Exactly. Willfully ignoring the cruel catch-22 here. The victims are begging for the institutional investigation that would eventually lead to that arrest.
Right. The police can't arrest him if the school keeps burying the evidence.
That's a vicious cycle. The community protects its own image first, and they only address the rot when external reality violently forces its way in.
And a community can only ignore a 28-page warning for so long before that external reality absolutely does force its way in.
The house of cards eventually falls.
It does. The eventual collapse of this institution wasn't initiated by the school board finally waking up and doing the right thing. It was initiated by the federal government.
The localized illusion of control was shattered by external law enforcement.
Let's track the mechanics of how this unravels, because Wakey was not an isolated incident.
No, not at all.
He was a symptom of a much larger systemic disease. And to prove that, we have to jump back slightly to 2014, right in the middle of Wakey's alleged core years of abuse.
Okay, what happened in 2014?
The Carterville High School band director, Michael Todd Norrington, is investigated by the Carbondale police.
Oh, wow.
He is ultimately arrested and charged with unauthorized video recording involving a juvenile.
So a completely different department, a different staff member, but the exact same underlying vulnerability regarding minor students.
Exactly. Fast forward to 2024. The cracks are widening in the district. The district announces investigations into a high school baseball coach and an athletic trainer contracted through Southern Illinois Healthcare for alleged inappropriate conduct.
The water pressure is building in the pipes.
It's about to burst.
Right.
And then, in November of 2024, the FBI receives an anonymous tip regarding possible sexual affairs involving a Carterville High School employee.
The FBI gets involved.
The FBI processes this tip, and they pass it down to the Carterville Police Department.
Federal authorities are now forcing the local jurisdiction to look behind the scoreboard. They can't ignore it anymore.
But look at the timeline here. The federal tip comes in November 2024. Wakey isn't put on leave until February 20th, 2026.
Like a long gap.
That is 15 months. Why does a federal tip regarding child sexual abuse take 15 months to result in a simple local administrative leave? He was still in the building.
Well, this is where we really have to understand the grueling mechanics of these specific types of investigations.
Break it down for me.
A tip is a starting point, right? It's not evidence. Local police have to build a case that can withstand a grand jury.
They need proof.
Right. And when you are dealing with systemic abuse spanning decades, Investigating means tracking down victims who have graduated. They've moved away.
They're adults now.
They are adults who have spent years compartmentalizing their trauma, interviewing traumatized individuals, corroborating their timelines against decade-old school schedules, and building a multi-victim indictment. It is an incredibly slow, painstaking legal process.
So the police are just working quietly in the background.
Exactly. And the police cannot force the school to act until they secure a sworn formal statement.
And they finally secure that statement on February 20th, 2026.
The tipping point.
That same day, the district's hand is forced. Wakey is placed on unpaid administrative leave. A month later, in March 2026, Superintendent Sarah Barnstable sends a letter to district families.
What does the letter say?
She discloses the investigation, and for the very first time, the district publicly reveals the 10-day suspension from 2009.
Unbelievable. 17 years later.
17 years!
The community is finally allowed to know that their defensive coordinator had a substantiated history of crossing boundaries.
The Wakey investigation acts like a stress test on a faulty municipal water system. You think you just have one bad pipe in the high school, but when law enforcement finally tests the water, you realize the toxic culture has leached into other departments.
It's everywhere.
Because in April 2026, Christopher C. Ballard, a faculty member connected to the Williamson County Special Ed District and Heron Elementary, is arrested.
Another one.
2 counts of aggravated criminal sexual assault, 2 counts of abuse. And investigators explicitly state that the Ballard case was uncovered because of the broader investigation into Wakey.
This is what we mean by systemic rot. The lack of accountability at the top creates a massive ripple effect across the entire educational ecosystem of the county.
Then we get to May 7th, 2026. The net officially closes. Wakey is arrested near Pontiac, Illinois by the Livingston County Sheriff's Office.
Well, he's finally in handcuffs.
He is extradited back to Williamson County. 2 days later, Sheriff Jeff Diederich holds a press conference outlining the massive 9-count indictment.
The community can't deny the mugshot now.
Right. On May 12th, Wakey appears in court, pleads not guilty, and is granted pretrial release with GPS monitoring at his parents' home up in Herscher, Illinois. And that very same night, under the crushing weight of public and legal scrutiny, the Carterville School Board finally fires him.
Well, the bureaucratic machinery finally executed its primary function, but only because the criminal justice system dragged them kicking and screaming across the finish line.
But what is absolutely staggering to me is the sheer volume of fallout from this.
Yeah.
In that same month, May 2026, 2 more Carterville employees are put on administrative leave.
It just keeps going.
Our sources indicate rumors of 5 or 6 others facing allegations ranging from sexting students to sexual contact with 18-year-olds. How does one single school district incubate this many alleged predators?
This is the contagion of bad culture.
The contagion.
Yes. In criminology, there is a broken windows theory.
Right. If a window is broken and not fixed, people assume nobody cares.
Exactly. It signals to the neighborhood that no one is watching, and soon all the windows are broken by vandals. The same psychological principle applies to institutional ethics.
How does that apply to a school?
If top-level administration looks the other way, like if they give a coach a 10-day suspension for severe boundary violations in 2009, and then let him maintain his power over students, it sends a massive, undeniable signal to every other staff member in that district.
It tells them the water is warm.
Tragically, yes. It signals to other bad actors or employees with poor impulse control that this specific environment is safe for predation.
Wow.
It dictates that the administration values the lack of friction over the enforcement of student safety. A lack of accountability doesn't just protect the current abuser, it actively breeds further misconduct. It creates an institutional safe haven.
So how is the Carterville administration handling the fallout now that the federal and local authorities have forced the issue?
I imagine they're circling the wagons.
Oh, absolutely. The local journalism on this has been relentless, specifically the Swinford Media Group. They have been filing Freedom of Information Act, or FOIA, requests to get the district's internal communications.
They want to see the emails.
They want to see who knew what and when. And the district is resisting. They labeled the FOIA requests, quote, unduly burdensome and voluminous.
Typical.
They are citing ongoing investigation exemptions. Assistant Superintendent Jeff Hartford declined to comment beyond the basic parent letter. Explain to me how a public school district can just deny a FOIA request by calling it burdensome.
Well, when a bureaucratic entity claims a FOIA request is unduly burdensome, They are utilizing a very specific legal loophole.
Of course they are.
They are essentially arguing that gathering the requested emails or documents would take too much staff time and disrupt the normal operations of the district.
It's an excuse.
It effectively puts a price tag on transparency. It's a stalling tactic. It's designed to exhaust the journalist and protect the institution's internal communications from public scrutiny until the news cycle moves on.
But contrast that defensive, lawyer-driven posture now with their total inaction back in 2022.
Right, with Kyle.
When Kyle handed them a 28-page document of community trauma, they didn't call it unduly burdensome to read. They just completely ignored it.
He didn't care.
They didn't initiate an internal review. They didn't call law enforcement. Because in 2022, their primary objective was protecting the institution from embarrassment. They were maintaining the cultural narrative of the winning football team.
And now,
in 2026, their primary objective is protecting the institution from massive legal and financial liability. In neither scenario was the administration's default posture focused on radical transparency for the sake of the victims.
and we have to center those victims. Because at the heart of all this bureaucratic failure, the FOIA requests, the press conferences, and the 20 years of Friday night football games are children.
Real people whose lives were altered.
Children who waited over a decade for an adult empowered to believe them. They are adults now carrying the weight of what allegedly happened in 2013, 2014, and 2015. If you are listening to this right now and you were a student at Carterville High School during any of those years,
Or really any year.
right, and you experienced something that violated your boundaries with any staff member, it is critical to know that there's an apparatus ready to listen to you now.
The Williamson County Sheriff's Office tip line is 618-997-6541. I'll repeat that. 618-997-6541.
The investigators have made it explicitly clear. They are building a timeline, and you will be believed.
And while we must absolutely state the legal standard that Jake Wakey is presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law, with his next court date scheduled for June 24th, 2026, that presumption of innocence in a courtroom does not negate the incredible courage and the validity of the victims who've already stepped forward.
They are the ones dismantling this culture of silence.
They really are.
The criminal justice system requires a trial to determine guilt, but a community requires the truth to heal. And those victims are providing the truth.
We really want to credit the investigative journalism that refused to let this stay hidden. Swinford Media Group, specifically Aaron Price.
Essential work.
Real News Press. Jackson Brandhorst and Molly Parker's reporting. The Judici court records that exposed the 2003 timeline. And the comprehensive Williamson County Sheriff's press conference. Local journalism serves as the immune system of a community, and they prove their immense value here.
They really did. And before we conclude this deep dive, I want to leave you with a chilling question to consider.
Okay, what is it?
We have spent an hour dissecting the machinery of the school district, the background checks, the administrative failures. But a public school district ultimately answers to its community.
Yeah.
It reflects the values of the town.
It's a mirror.
Right. So the question is this. If a 72-year winning tradition, if 424 wins, if a glowing scoreboard becomes the ultimate shield against accountability, at what exact point does a community's desperate desire to win make them completely complicit in maintaining the illusion?
Man, that is the question that should keep everyone awake. We started this deep dive talking about the pristine narrative of a Friday night football game under the lights. But when you look closely at Carterville, the administration chose the murky waters.
They chose the wins.
They chose to protect the scoreboard.
Yeah.
And the kids were the ones left to pay the ultimate price. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Take care of yourselves, and we'll see you next time.